Mistake of a Billionaire. Chapter 1. Mop Bucket and Miracles. They thought I was just a janitor. A mop, some bleach, maybe a gospel hum if I was feeling good. But that day I became something else entirely. It started with a busted AC on the top floor of Whitaker Medical Center in Jackson, Mississippi. Tyrone Jenkins was called up to stop the leak before it soaked through the floor and dripped down on the doctors' heads below. He wasn't supposed to be up there. Maintenance usually handled that stuff, but everybody else was out sick or lazy, and well, Tyrone always showed up. He dragged his mop bucket down the hallway humming "Ain't No Mountain High Enough." Not because life was sweet, but because his knees hurt and that song always helped him pretend otherwise. When he reached the CEO's office, he heard it. A soft cry like something had cracked open behind that fancy oak door. He peeked in, figuring someone left a window open or a squirrel got in again. But it wasn't a squirrel. It was a little girl, maybe 10 years old, sitting in a pink wheelchair like a flower left out in the dark too long. She had big eyes and hair tied up in two tight puffs. Her face was wet. Crying the kind of cry that don't make noise no more, just trembles. He paused at the door. "Hey, you good, baby girl?" She didn't answer. Just kept staring out the window like she was waiting on someone who forgot her. Tyrone didn't do well with silence. It made his thoughts too loud. So he reached into his cart, pulled out his old Bluetooth speaker, and tapped it to life. Smokey Robinson started playing, soft and smooth like butter in a hot pan. He grabbed his mop, held it like a dance partner, and started two-stepping across the floor like it was a ballroom. He wasn't no Fred Astaire, but he had rhythm where it counted. Spin, twist, dip. Real dramatic. The little girl blinked, then blinked again, and then, like the clouds finally moved, she smiled. A real smile. One of those crooked, caught-off-guard smiles that stretch all the way down to the bones. Tyrone bowed. "Told you my mop got moves." She giggled. "You look silly." "Girl, I am silly, that's the secret." He started humming, then slid her wheelchair gently in a slow circle like she was dancing too. She clapped a little, then lifted her arms, moving them like birds. "You ever danced before?" he asked. She nodded. "Before the accident." He nodded back like he understood more than he let on. "Well, sometimes people gotta learn to dance a new way, that's all." Right then the door burst open like a storm warning. Ms. Denise Whitaker, CEO, walked in with the kind of energy that made grown men check their shoelaces. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, and she was mad. "What is going on in here?" Tyrone froze. Maya, the girl, froze. The music kept playing like it ain't got manners. Denise's eyes narrowed. "Turn that off. Now." He fumbled with the speaker, killing the music fast. Silence hit hard. She looked at her daughter, then at Tyrone. "You're a janitor, not a babysitter, not a clown. This is a professional environment." I don't care what you were or weren't. You're fired, effective immediately." Tyrone didn't argue. No point. He'd seen this show before. He nodded, grabbed his mop like it was a suitcase, and started rolling his cart out. Maya's voice stopped him. "Don't go!" Denise snapped. "Maya!" The girl's lip trembled. "He was teaching me to dance again," Denise said. "You can't dance, sweetie. You're in a chair now. You need to accept that." Tyrone paused in the doorway, heart sinking like a stone. But he turned and gave Maya a little wink. "Remember what I told you, baby girl. Some butterflies fly different, but they still fly." and with that he was gone. Pushed his cart down the hallway like a man walking away from a fire he didn't start but got burned by anyway. What nobody knew, not yet anyway, was that Tyrone Jenkins wasn't just some dude with a mop and a playlist. And that little girl? She was the reason he came back to life. Because sometimes the ones we think got nothing left to give are the ones holding all the miracles. Chapter 2. Fired on sight. Ain't nothing louder than the silence after a child stops smiling. That's what the Whitaker house felt like after Tyrone left. Big, beautiful, expensive, and cold as the other side of the pillow. Denise walked around like everything was fine, heels clicking, staff nodding like nothing ever happened. But behind them, closed doors, that house was crying. Maya wouldn't eat, wouldn't play, wouldn't even look at her dance therapist. All she wanted was to sit in her wheelchair by the window and stare at the hospital parking lot like she was waiting on a ghost to show up. Denise kept telling herself it was just a phase. Kids bounce back, especially rich kids with access to every specialist in the state. But this time, Maya didn't bounce. She sank. Every morning, Denise would peek in Maya's room before she headed to the hospital. Her daughter used to greet her with a soft, "Hey, Mama." Now it was just a quiet stare, no TV, no books. Just that window. Denise tried everything. She called in new physical therapists, speech therapists, music therapists, even a man who played harp for cancer patients. Nothing. Maya shut down like someone turned off her switch. "She ain't talking," one nurse whispered to another, "like her spirit packed up and left." Meanwhile, on the other side of Jackson, Tyrone was sitting on a creaky couch in his one-bedroom apartment, eating peanut butter off a spoon and flipping through a photo album he hadn't touched in years. Every page was a memory of a different kid he'd helped back when he was Dr. Tyrone Jenkins, before he traded his white coat for a mop handle. He paused on one photo. A little girl in pink leg braces was laughing so hard her eyes were closed. She was holding his hand in the middle of a dance studio. Her name was Layla, his daughter, gone too soon. He sighed and rubbed his temples. "Why, I keep getting pulled back into this," he muttered. "Thought I was done." Back at the hospital, Denise was in her office going over quarterly reports when Maya's therapist stepped in. "Miss Whitaker," she said gently, "I know you said not to bring it up again, but maybe you should call Mr. Jenkins back." Denise looked up like the woman had grown another head. "I fired him for a reason." "With all due respect, ma'am," the therapist said, "your daughter hasn't smiled since he left, and she hasn't moved her arms like that in weeks." Denise waved her off. "He overstepped. He was just the janitor." The therapist paused. What if he wasn't just a janitor? That night, Denise stood at the foot of Maya's bed watching her sleep, if you could even call it that. Maya's body was still, but her eyebrows were tight like she was fighting monsters in her dreams. Denise reached down and brushed her hair back, whispering, "I'm trying, baby girl, I really am." Maya stirred, eyes still closed. "Tyrone made me feel like I could dance again." Denise stepped back like she got slapped. It was the first full sentence Maya had said in 2 days. In that moment, a question started rolling around in Denise's head, heavy and ugly. What if I made a mistake? The next morning, she pulled up Tyrone's old employee file. Address, 414 Pleasant Street, above Johnson's barber shop. She stared at it for a minute, then closed the laptop. "No," she whispered. "Nope, not doing that. We don't chase after janitors. But that afternoon she found herself sitting in her car outside that exact address, hand hovering over the door handle, heart beating like gospel drums. Inside the apartment, Tyrone was fixing himself a grilled cheese sandwich when he heard the knock. He opened the door and there she was, Denise Whitaker, CEO heels and all, standing in front of his linoleum kitchen like she didn't just fire him 2 days ago. He didn't say a word, just stared, waiting. She cleared her throat. I think I might have been wrong. Tyrone raised an eyebrow. Well, now, that's something rich folks don't say every day. She sighed. My daughter hasn't smiled since you left. He leaned against the counter, folded his arms. Maybe that's 'cause you treated the one thing making her smile like trash. She looked down, real quiet for a second. You gonna come back? Tyrone didn't answer right away. He stared at the stove, watched his grilled cheese burn on one side. Then he said, I'll come back, but not as your employee. If I come back as Maya's coach, her therapist, her friend. And you gonna have to step out of the way. Denise didn't answer, but her silence said plenty. Tyrone nodded. All right then, you let me know when you're ready to stop controlling everything and start listening. He closed the door, not mean, not angry, just done. Denise stood there a moment longer, smelling burnt cheese through the crack in the door. And somewhere in that smell, in that moment, in that pause between pride and parenting, she realized she hadn't just fired a janitor. She might have sent away the one person who still believed her daughter could fly. Chapter 3. The Man Nobody Knew. Sometimes the truth don't knock, it just walks right through the front door, kicks off its shoes, and dares you to say something. The day after Denise left Tyrone's apartment, she couldn't focus on nothing. Not the budget meeting, not the email from the mayor's office, not even the overpriced coffee her assistant brought in like clockwork. All she could see was her daughter sitting in that wheelchair, whispering about a janitor who made her feel like she could fly. And all she could hear was Tyrone's voice saying, You treated the one thing making her smile like trash. Denise wasn't used to being wrong, and she sure as hell wasn't used to feeling guilty. But something about that man and his grilled cheese kitchen had stuck to her soul like peanut butter on the roof of your mouth. She needed to know more. So she called her head of HR and said, run a background check on Tyrone Jenkins, all of it. I want to know if he's ever been arrested, where he went to school, who his mama is, everything. The report came back 2 hours later, and what she saw nearly knocked her out her leather chair. Tyrone Jenkins, age 52, former child therapist, master's from Xavier, PhD from Howard, published in 3 medical journals, ran a center in Memphis for children with disabilities. Had worked with over 200 kids before suddenly closing the center 6 years ago. Cause of closure? Personal tragedy. There was a photo in the file. A little girl with pink braces on her legs sitting on a balance ball, laughing her whole face off. Next to her stood Tyrone, younger, thinner, in a white coat with his name stitched in gold thread. Denise's eyes got wet before she could stop him. She clicked through the file like she was trying to make it all untrue just by scrolling fast. But there it was, his daughter's name. Layla Jenkins, died in a car accident on her way to a dance recital. Tyrone was driving, icy roads, no fault but the guilt stuck. After that, no more clinics, no more doctoring, just janitor work, hospitals only. Like he couldn't stop helping kids, but he couldn't be their doctor no more either. Like he was trying to stay close to the light without stepping all the way in. Denise leaned back in her chair and whispered, "Lord, what have I done?" At the same time, across town, Tyrone was sitting in his kitchen, fixing up the same peanut butter spoon and watching the same news he never listened to. But this time, he had Maya's picture out on the table, a screenshot he printed from hospital security footage, her smiling while they danced. That smile was different. It wasn't polite or fake. It was real. It was Layla level. He shook his head and muttered, "Don't do it, T, don't get dragged back in." But it was already too late. The girl had pulled him back in without even knowing it. That night, Denise opened a drawer she hadn't touched in years. Inside was a dusty envelope labeled "In case of emergency." Her late husband Marcus had written it before he passed. Inside was a list of names and numbers of people he trusted, including one circled in blue ink. Dr. Tyrone Jenkins. Ask him about movement therapy. He saved Jamal's kid. She remembered now. Years ago, one of their board members had a son born with severe nerve damage, couldn't crawl, couldn't sit up straight. And this janitor, this same man, had helped him walk within a year. She'd completely forgotten. Or maybe she just never paid attention. The next morning, she went to Maya's room early before sunrise. The little girl was still asleep, but she was clinging to a plush butterfly toy that Tyrone had once handed her after their second dance. Denise sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, "I'm so sorry, baby girl, I didn't see it. I didn't see him." As if she heard it in her sleep, Maya whispered, "He said I was still flying, just different." Denise blinked back tears. She had all the power, all the money, all the access to specialists and top-floor offices. But the one person her daughter needed wore a janitor's uniform and had hands that smelled like bleach and hope. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was barely peeking up over Jackson, but it looked like the kind of morning that don't take no excuses, the kind that tells you to go fix what you broke. And Denise Whitaker, who ain't bowed her head to nobody in 15 years, finally admitted something out loud. "I need that man back, not for my hospital, for my daughter, and maybe for me too." Chapter 4, When Truth Smells Like Bleach. They say pride goeth before the fall, but in Denise Whitaker's case it went before a slow, painful realization that maybe her high heels had been clicking past the truth for way too long. By Wednesday morning, Maya had stopped speaking altogether. She'd gone from not smiling to not talking to barely moving. The therapists she hired were now basically babysitting her wheelchair, making notes, drinking coffee, and saying things like, "She's unresponsive," or "This might be depression." Denise was sick of hearing the word might. She was sick of guessing. She wanted her daughter back, and the more she tried to fix things with her wallet, the more everything just slipped through her hands. So she called Tyrone again. He didn't answer. She called again. Still no answer. That man had the nerve to leave her sitting in her own guilt like leftovers in the back of the fridge. Cold, heavy, kinda smelling like old regret. So she did what most powerful women do when they're desperate. She showed up. It was raining that morning in Jackson, the kind of soft southern rain that soaks through your clothes before you even realize it's fallen. Denise stood outside Tyrone's building, umbrella in one hand. her daughter's butterfly toy in the other. Her heels sunk into the wet gravel, but she didn't move. She just waited like the answer to all her pain was gonna walk out that door at any second. And then he did. Tyrone stepped out in sweatpants, durag, and a hoodie that had a bleach stain shaped like a duck on the front. He looked at her like he already knew why she was there. No surprise, no anger, just tired. "I messed up," she said, rain dripping off her face. He scratched his head. "You figured that out all by yourself, huh? I need you to come back," she said, "please." He didn't say yes, didn't say no, just stood there thinking. Then he said, "You know, rich folks always think saying please is like some kind of magic spell. But I ain't Cinderella, and I sure ain't trying to be your fairy godmother." She let out a shaky breath. "I don't want you to save me, Mr. Jenkins. I want you to help save my daughter. You already started. I just didn't see it." He looked down at the butterfly plush she was holding. "She still got that?" "Clutches it like it breathes for her," she said. Tyrone finally nodded. "All right, but this time I don't work for you. I work with her, and you gon' have to sit your control issues in the back seat." Denise didn't argue. She just nodded, wiped her face, and whispered, "Deal." When they got to the house, the staff looked like ghosts had walked in. Tyrone didn't care. He walked in like he'd been there all along, like the mop and the badge he used to wear never really defined him in the first place. He found Maya in her room, curled up like a wilted flower. He sat down next to her real gentle, like he was trying to wake a dream instead of a child. He pulled out his little speaker, set it on the windowsill, and hit play. Smokey again, same song. Tracks of My Tears. Fittin', really. Her eyes flickered, then she turned and whispered, "You came back." He smiled. "Told you. I don't quit on folks who clap for my dancin'." He reached out, held her hand, and they sat like that for a long while. No big speeches, no therapy tricks, just music and stillness and two souls that had been bruised by life but still knew how to hum. In the hallway, Denise watched, arms crossed, face unreadable. One of the nurses leaned in and said, "He ain't a janitor, is he?" "No," Denise said, eyes never leaving her daughter. "He's the man my pride told me to ignore." That night, Tyrone left a folder on the kitchen counter. Inside was a hand-drawn plan. Exercises, music therapy steps, goals. It was labeled Butterfly Method, Maya Whitaker, age 10. Denise read every line like scripture, and when she got to the last page, she saw a little note in his messy handwriting. She don't need to walk to dance. She just needs to believe she's still flying. She set the folder down and whispered to the room, "Lord, send more men who mop miracles with bare hands. Because sometimes the people we think are beneath us are the ones already kneeling beside us holding the light." Chapter 5. Butterflies with Bent Wings. Ain't nobody too broken to be loved. That's the kind of thing folks say in church, but Tyrone Jenkins believed it because he'd seen it. He'd lived it. And now he was watching it unfold right in front of him like a slow bloom in the heat of a Mississippi summer. 3 months had passed since he came back into Maya's life. 3 months of slow progress, tired muscles, laughter that sounded like it hadn't been heard in years. The Whitaker mansion didn't feel like a tomb anymore. It buzzed. There was music in the walls now, drawings on the fridge, and the faint smell of cinnamon toast floating down the hall some mornings. It was starting to feel like a home, a real one. Maya still used her chair most days, but she'd learned to stand for a few minutes at a time. Her arms were strong now, graceful. She danced with her shoulders, her hands, her head, like her whole soul was moving even if her legs weren't. Tyrone called it butterfly style, and Maya ate that up like ice cream on Sunday. Said she was learning how to fly different. One Saturday afternoon, Denise sat in the garden watching them dance. It was something so simple. An old speaker, some Marvin Gaye, and a girl with her arms in the air like she was praising the sky. Tyrone moved beside her, not leading, not pushing, just keeping time. And for the first time in her life, Denise saw joy she hadn't paid for. It humbled her in a way no business deal ever had. That same day, Maya said she wanted to help other kids who felt stuck. She didn't say disabled. She didn't say hurt, just stuck. And that's how the idea started. 6 months later, they opened the doors to the Butterfly Room, a therapy studio right there in the old guest wing of the mansion. It had mirrors, music, soft floors, painted wings on the walls. The program was free. Tyrone ran it, but Maya ran the heart of it. She greeted every child like a sister and told every parent, "We don't fix people here. We help them find their wings." It wasn't just kids that got changed. Denise changed too. She traded her sharp suits for sweaters and jeans. Started spending time with her daughter instead of hovering over her like a CEO with a broken project. She listened more, talked less. And when investors came calling, wondering why she hadn't expanded her hospital empire, she told them straight, "I'm building something better now." The town of Jackson took notice. News crews came, wrote pieces about the butterfly girl and the janitor turned therapist. Folks who used to whisper behind Denise's back about how cold she was now asked her for advice on how to love louder. She always pointed to Tyrone and said, "He's the one who taught me." But Tyrone never tried to take credit. He stayed quiet. Said he was just doing what Layla, his daughter, would have wanted. Every time Maya smiled, it felt like his little girl was smiling too. From somewhere far off, where hearts don't break and knees don't ache and butterflies don't fall. 1 year later, they held a recital in the garden. 20 kids from the program danced that day. Some in chairs, some on crutches, some with braces and bright sneakers. They moved like they were made of sunlight. Maya went last. She wore a yellow dress and pink sneakers. She stood up on her own, held out her arms, and moved through the routine Tyrone helped her build. It wasn't flawless. Her knees wobbled, her balance swayed. But she never stopped, and when she finished, the whole crowd stood up. "Not out of pity, out of pride," Denise cried. Tyrone smiled, eyes full but quiet. Maya bowed, then spoke into the mic. "I used to think butterflies had to fly high to be special, but now I know. Even if they fly low or slow or sideways, they're still butterflies." And just like that, a girl who once couldn't move without crying became a voice that made people believe again. Later that night, Tyrone sat on the porch, looking up at the stars. Denise brought him sweet tea, sat beside him. Neither of them talked for a while. Then she said, "You saved her." He shook his head. "Nah, she saved me." She nodded. "You saved me too." He looked at her sideways and said, "You gon' make me blush with all this sentimental talk." They laughed. And somewhere in that still Mississippi night, the past finally let go. Not erased, but healed. Because healing don't mean forgetting. It just means moving different, with love in the places that used to hurt. Some butterflies fly different, but they still fly.